Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should. And please check out getitinwriting.net/shows for a full list of our podcasts and YouTube series.
My guest is producer and musician Luke Potter. Luke has worked on a number of projects over the past few years and become more and more of a fixture in, what would you call it? I guess you can't really call it the UK music scene anymore because there really isn't a scene per se, is there?
No, I think maybe popular music is kind of where I'd put myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd put you there too. Although you seem to transcend a number of genres in the stuff you do. Tell me a little bit about your musical background.
So I know this is probably quite a common answer, but music has been such a part of my life from the very beginning. My father was in a band in his era, and I guess the songwriting side of it sort of was just always there. And there were guitars around the house, and I would just sort of, when I was a teenager, just look at them and go, "Nah, I'm not going to play that. I'm not going to play that guitar." And and as I got older, I sort of just picked up a guitar, and the first thing I did was start writing a song rather than sort of learning a cover, which is what I know a lot of people tend to do, which is a great introduction. But there were no songs I wanted to learn, so I started writing my own. And I think my dad was really happy because for so long I thought I wasn't writing music. And so no, it's something that's bonded me and my dad together. I've just been writing songs since about the age of 18, which is when I really picked it up. And it's just not stopped. And I've went from a songwriter to a producer to just a top liner to a vocalist to an artist. I've been doing everything.
So was there a certain aspect of rebelliousness there in terms of, I'm not going to do what my dad does kind of thing?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, definitely. I think I wanted to be a skateboarder or something. And what was great actually is that I know a lot of my friends tell me I was very lucky to find music very early. So 18, for me feels really early. But I actually, before that, I was trying to do travel and tourism. I was trying to learn some care. I had a part-time job as a lifeguard. So I've been doing lots of different things, before I was able to just go, okay, I'm going to just do music now.
Just avoiding anything that might make us look like dad, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously there must have been some musical influences there.
Yeah, well, heavy Beatles, just melodious music. My dad's a song guy, a little bit like me, where he has his favorite bands, like the Beatles, Stones. He's got a guy that we love called Blue Macaulay, who I used to listen to all the time with my dad in the back of his car. And I was actually fortunate enough to work with Blue. He produced my first album. So he's a big musical influence to me. And has kind of shaped the way that I go into any session where I sort of dissect every little bit that I do of a song until it's perfect.
That's an interesting point, because I think in certain ways it's a delineator of music and music production. When I started working as more of a producer, one of the things that I noticed right away is this tendency that a lot of us have to, as you say, dissect the music and really be almost analytical to the point where you can't listen to music the way a normal person does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You hear things that you don't necessarily hear when you're younger as well. Like when I was listening to songs when I was, 15 or 14, I wasn't listening to the bass line. I wasn't really listening to that synth line or that acoustic guitar over in the corner. It was just a whole sonic thing. And now it's like you're trying to fill in the sonic gaps and make it that big sound so that when people hear it, it just sounds like it's meant to be together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an aspect of especially arrangement and production that's almost mathematical in that sense, you know, trying to figure out where everything fits and how to make the parts fit together in such a way that everything's not going on all at once, and you can pick out those aspects.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you got to be careful with that as well, because you know, you can know it so well that sometimes you forget to step out of the box a bit and go, well, hey, why don't we, you know, this isn't too much of a wild one, but let's put the chorus first, or
Yeah.
you know, or don't be scared to change the melody in the second half of the verse.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because there's that famous story of George Martin working with the Beatles, and apparently when they brought the song "Can't Buy Me Love" to him, it started with the verse.
Yeah.
And he was the one who said, you know, no, put the chorus up front. And that's an unusual approach, but it's that kind of thing where, as you say, you have to learn to step outside of it. And that's really difficult when you're that involved in the creative process.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working with a very talented artist called Jacob Brown. And we're currently recording his second album, and he's doing some really, really great stuff. But it's so different, you know, now that I'm sort of adjusting to being a producer, of, you know, skipping between being that writer in the room and also skipping to, oh, which kick drum should I use? What snare sound does this need? Does it need a pad? Does it need a piano? Does it need a acoustic guitar? It's just a never ending, your brain is just going.
And that's an analytical thing that I think, you know, and you and I were just talking before we started recording about the idea of really having to play all of these multiple roles, you know, and really step from one role to another pretty quickly, where, you know, you're talking about like, what does the song need from a production perspective? And then you have to think, well, you know, the snare needs a little bit more 15K, or, you know, something like that. And it's all these little roles, and having to be able to step back and see that big picture in order to take on all those different parts.
Yeah. And it's really rewarding when it works. And you know, it can be quite frustrating when you're up at night and you're going, what can I do to make that work? Yeah, so no, it's great. It's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle. And I think
it is.
If you enjoy making a puzzle, then the song's going to come out great because you enjoyed making it.
Mm-hmm. So what's your perspective on the music industry as it is now? How has your, I mean, obviously your role is a lot different, but you're also dealing with putting out product and essentially trying to get that product out there and in front of people and into people's heads.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how we can do it now, really. Like, and you know, it's never been easier for an artist to be heard, in terms of the opportunities are there for you to take, but it's how do you use those opportunities? Like with the likes of Spotify and everything now, it means that there's so much more music in the world now than there ever was, because you have people that can sit at home and make a song in their room. You know, going back years and years ago, people used to, you know, my dad talks to me about it all the time. He says people used to save up so much money so they could have 3 days in a studio to record a song. And I think obviously back then labels were giving artists and bands so much more money because there was A&R.
Yeah.
And now it's like record labels will just listen to a song and go, yeah, we like that. Let's try something. And it might not, but I think that's the dangerous part that I don't think is very artist friendly these days. But with that being said, it's wonderful that there's so many platforms like Facebook and Instagram where you can upload videos of you singing. You can put up a song, you can put up a video. It's just getting the right people to hear it and the right team around you.
It's true. And you mentioned an interesting point that has always kind of frustrated me, and that is the lack of opportunity to develop that artist. When these record labels were signing artists, they would usually assign a producer or three over a period of time. You'd have an opportunity to really work with that artist and help them grow as an artist. And I think at this point now, really, it's, you'd better have something ready, and you'd better have a huge Instagram following before you even put it out there. And then once you do, following it up is going to be even harder.
Yeah, I mean, you just get lost, don't you, in the ether, basically. That's kind of what you're saying, right? It's like, and that's the other sad part about it is that, you can work your tail off and possibly write the best song in the world. I mean, theoretically, let's hope so one day. And chances are nobody will ever get a chance to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, but that's why it is so important to be headstrong in this business and know, okay, well, this song isn't as good as I thought it was. Maybe I need to write something better, and which is why it's not happened yet. But it's a lot of connections. Yeah, there's so many things you got to do.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that about being headstrong. That's one thing. If you look at a lot of artists through the years who have maintained their artistic integrity rather than kowtowing to what, some record label has said they should do. And, a lot of times those artists have lost followers as they've, sort of changed their identity. I mean, Bowie is a classic example, reinventing himself with every single album. And, a lot of people sort of drop off and say, well, I really wanted to hear the Bowie from last year, that kind of thing, and that's when you say headstrong, that's one of the things that I think really defines an artist, isn't it?
I want, 100%. It's, I went to the, I think it was the ASCAP convention in LA going back, maybe 4 or 5 years now. And I watched this guy talking, and he was, Dan Wilson was his name.
I know
and
that.
he wrote, so wonderful writer.
Yes.
And he basically just said to, a room full of 300 writers, if you've got a plan B, you should take it. And I mean, I guess what he was saying was, obviously people aren't always fortunate enough to, be in a situation where they can always write music, all the time. They have to have like a part-time job. But I guess what he was saying was, if you're working that part-time job and you want to be a songwriter, you got to do everything in your power to be a songwriter.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, I'll write a song today. It's got to be, it's a craft. You got to work.
It is. And it's a craft that you've got to put your, what do they call it? Your 10,000 hours into it,
Yeah. Great song as well.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So for you, in terms of working with artists now, I mean, obviously, the Holy Grail is no longer getting a recording contract. Do you get involved as well with helping artists to promote their work?
Not necessarily on that side of things. No, I tend to focus. I've got like a few really good projects that I'm working on at the moment with a band in Australia. They're like a punk pop band. So I've been mixing and producing some of their stuff. But these guys that I work with are so savvy anyway. And I'm lucky, because actually I think that's one of the things that make me feel like I'm turning into more of a writer and a producer, is because I'm not too fussed anymore about, Instagram and all of that sort of stuff, because I want to write music because I want to write music. It doesn't, that's what it comes down to. Yeah, I want it to be heard, but that's not why I'm doing it, I suppose, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it's an important point, because I think a lot of artists, when they're first coming up, they're almost too vulnerable to the public, so to speak, and that tends to then almost stifle your growth, because you're at a point where you really aren't ready yet to realize your own vision. And if you allow everybody, everybody's Facebook comments or whatever to, no, you should change this and you should change that, you're never going to really develop as an artist yourself.
No. I think that what you've just hit on something really cool there is that when I'm producing and writing with other people, I feel I'm a lot more helpful in the room. When it's just me and I'm writing a song on my own, I am my worst enemy. 100% my worst enemy. I'm like, nope, this is the wrong hi-hat. No, this is the wrong melody. And it's just an endless loop. And yeah, every once in a while you go, yes, I've done something really great here. But it's definitely a process before you get to that point.
Yeah, it's true. And like most of us, we have archives of stuff we've thrown away, and maybe I'll use that idea sometime later, and notebooks full of fragments of songs and things like that,
Absolutely. And some of them just get lost, don't they? I mean, I'm sure I've written lots of half songs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, collaboration like that, I think it's really helpful, because you get that feedback from someone else that you'll never get from doing it yourself,
No, yeah. It's really special when it works as well.
And really painful when it doesn't.
Yeah, no, do you know what? I've been very fortunate actually, where I feel like the majority of things that I work on, I'm really passionate about. So yeah, I feel like Jacob, my writing partner, it's just a joy to work with him, and I feel like we're not even really working when we're working, which is fantastic.
So obviously the ability to work with people over Zoom calls and whatnot now, that's another tremendous aspect that would never have been possible years ago.
Yeah, no, 100%. We're very lucky. And I think the lockdowns and COVID really sort of changed the game as well. I mean, people have been having to use Zoom and FaceTime to talk. And, I've been mixing this Australian song, for about a week now. And every morning it's like, we have to talk to each other at this specific time in the day.
Right.
Because if someone's in the room, they can go, hey, well, how try that piano? So it's been good, but it's also been challenging for a lot of artists and writers.
Yeah, I think so. So for you, I mean, obviously you had some kind of musical training. Did you have some technical training too, or are you entirely self-taught?
So yeah, basically I'm just a by ear guy. I can definitely hear when it's wrong, and my music theory is coming along with it, but it hasn't stopped me in sort of any way just yet.
Yeah, it's almost it's almost counterproductive sometimes to know too many rules, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you've got great musicians that know it all, and you've got great musicians that don't know it all.
Yes, yes, and both are valid approaches, definitely.
Yeah, it's whatever works for you. I mean, as long as you're making music, regardless of how clever it is or what it should be like.
Right. And how about from the technical aspect? I mean, obviously, one needs to sit down with a computer and learn all of this stuff, things like signal flow and whatnot.
Yeah, process of elimination for me, man. Just
screw it up enough times and you get it right?
I'll get it right. Yeah, just keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that might take a couple days.
At least, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And thankfully there's a huge community of people out there who we can tap and say, hey, hive mind, I'm screwing this up. What am I doing wrong? And wade through all of the abuse.
Yeah, wade through all of the abuse. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good.
Such a shame that artists get the abuse, but the way it is these days, I guess.
It is. So what would be your advice to 15-year-old you coming up now?
Oh, wow. Well, actually, do you know, I feel very fortunate because I've had a pretty decent licensing deal early on, which sort of allowed me to get like 18, up to like 22, 25 million streams in total now, which I'm really, really proud of. Um, but I'd high five myself at 15 and go, just do it, just carry on. And I say sometimes it's going to be tough, but do it. You can do it. Because if you want to do it enough, then you'll do it. And I want to do it.
Well, and that I really think is the point right there, is having the persistence to carry on, because especially when you're younger and you're just getting started at something, there's a tremendous likelihood of just throwing your hands up and saying, "Oh, screw this, I suck,"
Yeah, no, and it takes a lot to get through that.
It does.
And I mean, and like you said earlier, which you hit on earlier with the internet, before you've even had a chance to be good, there's people can be pretty mean sometimes. So you got to listen to those who trust you can trust and love you.
Yeah, yeah. As well as listen to your own inner voices and just say, "No, damn it, I'm going to do this," and
yeah, if
be
not
persistent.
more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
So what's next for you?
So what's next for me? That's a good question. I'm basically just sort of finishing off some albums. I've been working on a lot of my own stuff, which I want to put out eventually under this new artist project I'm working on called Heckle. So if you like any of that, you can go and check that out on Spotify. I'm really proud of it. That's all written and produced by me. And in the meantime, I've been writing country music for a country duo. I've been writing like Bonnie Tyler songs. Yeah, I've been busy. I'm keeping busy. I guess I'm doing a lot of everything.
And a lot of musical versatility there, obviously, too.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's what I struggle with the most, is because I'm working on lots of different genres. And when I wake up in the morning, I don't know what I'm hearing sometimes.
Yes, I know that feeling. I've had weeks where I've worked on 3 or 4 very musically diverse projects, and your brain sort of starts to juxtapose everything together, and next thing you know, you're throwing a pop riff into a sort of a project that where it doesn't really belong, and sometimes that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, I can see lots of guitars behind you. So you is that your main instrument, or do you do a bit of everything?
Well, they're mostly basses, actually, and that is my main instrument.
Oh, you're a bassist.
Yes, I'm a bassist. I can carry my own as a rhythm guitarist. As a lead guitarist, I like to call people who know how to do it far more eloquently than I do.
I'm the same. Yeah. Just tell me what chords it is.
Yeah, and I do believe that that's part of it also, is being able to really bring in other artists, not only because they bring in other influences, but because a lot of times, if you do something in a vacuum, it's going to sound a certain way because that's all you, it's all you bringing it to the table, isn't it?
Yes, I agree. Definitely. So you produce as well, or?
Not so much anymore, but I had a long history of doing that. Yeah, I actually lived in Germany for several years and worked with a number of German bands.
Wow.
Rock and indie stuff mostly. Lived in Hamburg for a number of years, and prior to that was doing a lot of that same production in Los Angeles. So
you're in LA now?
Actually, no, I have been in Vegas for the last couple of years.
Oh wow, yeah, I'd love to go.
It's quite a different scene, definitely. There's a lot of live production here, which is really interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, so what is that? Well, so tell me a little bit more about that. I'm a bit.
Well, for the most part, before the shutdown, Cirque du Soleil more or less owned this town.
Oh,
and
wow,
they still do in terms of live production. There's a lot of live theater and live production here. And I came from the studio world, but I did work a lot in live production as well. And so for me, seeing all of that now and seeing how all of that has changed over the last few years, especially,
Yeah.
it's just remarkable, you know.
That's
And
amazing.
the technology behind it has changed too, and so it's changed the entire creative process, you
In a
know.
good way? Yeah.
For the most part, in a good way, although, you know, going back to what we were talking about before, the whole idea of artists not having a chance to really develop, that's also true in the creative process now, because so much of it is automated.
Yes.
You know, and there's, I mean, you know, not to diss anybody who's using a loop or something like that, but if everything you're picking is just a preset and a loop, then, you know, you're not going to get your own creativity within that. And that's, you know, when you were talking earlier about, you know, doing pop stuff and you know, learning stuff from your dad, I think to a certain extent there is a little bit of that creative ethos that gets lost if everything is kind of too prefab, you know?
Yeah, no, I got that. Yeah, definitely. I think it's very important to on the studio, from my studio experience, is, you know, there's nothing wrong with finding something that you like. Like if you like a certain sound or anything, but just look at it. You know, what can you do to make it better?
Filter it through your own process a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make it yours.
Well,
Make
you
it
know,
yours.
it's funny. I mean, you know, you talk about some of that old stuff, you know, you mentioned Beatles and Stones. Now, both of those groups were heavily influenced by blues artists.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the early Stones, they were doing stuff like, you know, covering, you know, Leadbelly and Chuck Berry and, you know, all of these blues artists and whatnot. And I think that's, you know, if you look at then the way they filtered that and the way their versions of it were very close to the original, but completely different at the same time,
Yeah.
you know. And I think
Absolutely.
that is a really important part of the creative process, to filter it through your own perspective and really sprinkle a lot of other influences in it, so to speak, you know?
Yeah. That's what music's all about, isn't it? Like what you're saying, it's just it being you.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was having this conversation with someone the other day because, I can't remember the artist, but there was a cover version of a song that this particular artist had done. And I thought, you know, it's good and everything, but it's just too close to the original. And,
Yeah.
you know, that there's not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think the whole idea is to be able to take a song, if you're covering someone else's material, take that and really make it your own, isn't it?
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah, it's important to get your voice. I mean, when I was younger, all the bands I used to listen to were American bands.
Mm.
So, and I think I still do a little bit of it now when I sing. But you know, for a long time I was singing with an American accent. Because I find a lot of young singers as well. They intimidate. They look at what others do and they're like, I want to do that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sometimes it takes a couple years. It might take people faster than that, but it took me a couple years to go, what am I trying to sound like?
Who am
Who is
I?
Luke? Who is
Yeah.
Luke wanting to sound like, rather than who does he want to sound like? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the creative process, is just learning that and learning, you know, learning to find your own voice, so to speak, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And at the point that you've been doing that, I think it qualifies you a little bit more to produce other people as well, because you're conscious of that. And I think that's so important. I can't think of anything more detrimental to an artist than saying, no, you should sound like so and so.
Yeah, no.
I mean, one of the very first projects that I worked on after I moved to Germany, I had signed to BMG and they sent me a band, and we worked on their project, and they were a very unique sounding band. Really, they had their own sound for sure. And yet the first A&R people that I played it for, they said, oh, well, you know, it almost sounds a little bit like the Police. Maybe you should change this part here, and the whole point being, no, it can have aspects of this artist or that artist as an influence or whatever, but aren't we looking for someone to have their own voice?
Yeah, I mean, that's what stands the test of time, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, Tom Petty, for example, I mean, and this is like, I love Tom Petty, but he had such a unique voice.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say that it was a classic voice. His voices suited him because he did what he did so well.
Yes.
And anyone else trying to sing his songs could never do it as well, because that's what made it so iconic. It was the fact that he was singing them like he was singing them.
Yes, exactly. And it's not necessarily having a classically beautiful voice as much as it is having a characteristic voice.
Yeah. And you don't need to do, people want to hear good melodies and good songs. I think a lot of the music now is all about what you can do with your voice. Like rundowns. Well, I mean, I'm not adverse to auto-tune. I think if used right, then it's a tool that you can.
Well, no, I'm speaking of using it as a production tool. There are some people who have used it to an extreme, and I think I'm not averse to technology at all. I agree. It's certainly got its place, and it's certainly really helpful. But I think using it as a replacement for talent, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that artists are going to find their way eventually. It might take some time, but I'm still trying to figure out what on earth I'm trying to do. So, and I think that's what being an artist is that that's why people like, not comparing myself at all because I'm nowhere near it, but like you said, Bowie's albums changed so much, and I think that's just called being human.
It is, and it's a process of discovery. And I think you just hit on something really important, which is that artists are always looking for that form of expression. And if you're truly devoted to being an artist, you're going to keep searching and keep changing, and you might lose some fans along the way because certain people want you to be stuck in a certain time and in a certain genre or whatever. But I think the mark of a true artist is really to continue to grow and search.
Yeah, 100%. Keep looking.
Yeah, keep trying things that are new, right?
Exactly. Yeah, well, who knows what's over the hill?
Fair point. Yeah.
No.
Luke Potter, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.